Welcome to the journey through history, where our footsteps are brought back to life. Let's begin.
Welcome to The Debate. Today we're delving into a moment, a single event in 9 AD that didn't just alter Roman history, but really drew a line across the map of Europe that in many ways still exists today, the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest.
And it was an absolute annihilation. We're talking about 3 full Roman legions, the 17th, the 18th, and 19th, plus all their auxiliary support, just systematically destroyed over 3 days. Out of, maybe 25,000 personnel, only 1,000 or so made it back to the Rhine.
It's incredible. And that defeat, it was so much more than just a military loss. It really solidified the Rhine as the Limes Germanicus, the permanent border of the Roman world. It stopped the conquest of Germania Magna dead in its tracks. And, that's why we have this deep cultural and linguistic divide between the Romans and Germanic worlds.
And right at the center of it all is one man, Arminius. He was the Cheruscan prince who orchestrated the entire thing. So the question for us really is this: was he a national hero, a liberator for his people, or was he just a cold, calculating betrayer of the state that educated and elevated him? I'm going to argue that his actions were fundamentally an unforgivable act of treachery.
And I can see that point of view, I can. But I'm going to take the opposite stance. I think Arminius' actions were not just justified, but absolutely necessary. He used the very tools Rome gave him to defend his homeland from an aggressive empire. For me, that makes him a freedom fighter, a hero. My position really centers on this idea of cultural survival. If Teutoburg hadn't happened, it's almost certain that Germania would have gone the way of Gaul or Hispania. It would have been absorbed, Latinized, and today it would probably be a Roman-speaking region. Arminius stopped that, and his motive, I think, was a direct response to the governor Publius Quinctilius Varus and his high-handed administration. Varus wasn't treating the tribes as allies. He was treating them like barbarians to be civilized, imposing Roman taxes, Roman courts, things a free people would obviously resent.
But hang on. The creation of the province of Germania Magna was established imperial policy. This came from Augustus himself. Varus was just carrying out the state's mandate, and Arminius, having served in the Roman army, knew this perfectly well.
Exactly. And that's what made him so effective. He was sent to Rome as a political hostage, but he came back a weapon. He learned Latin. He understood Roman military tactics, Roman law. He saw how the system worked from the inside while serving in places like Pannonia. And he used every single one of those assets, including his high rank, to defend his people. He essentially learned the language of the occupier so he could shout for freedom in it.
I'm sorry, I don't see it as purely strategic positioning. It feels like that minimizes the very real personal trust that was involved. Arminius wasn't just some asset. He was deeply integrated into the Roman system. He was a Roman citizen, which was a huge deal. And, maybe more importantly, he was an equestrian. That put him in the Roman elite just one step below the senators. He got immense privilege from Rome.
But he was still a Cheruscan prince, standing on Cheruscan soil. The titles don't change that.
But the titles created a bond with Varus, a personal bond. Varus saw him as a friend, a trusted advisor for local intelligence. And Arminius exploited that trust so ruthlessly. He made up this story about a minor rebellion up north, just to lure the entire column, all 25 kilometers of it, with families, wagons, non-combatants, into the worst possible terrain. This wasn't a spontaneous uprising. It was a calculated slaughter, engineered under the deepest, most profound pretense of friendship. That isn't heroic resistance. That's treason. You frame his integration as purely cynical, but you have to square that with the level of deceit involved. He didn't just benefit from Roman status. He was a serving officer. He had taken an oath. So his betrayal of Varus, who saw him as a peer, a trusted subordinate, is reprehensible because he had risen so high. He knew the rules of war, and he deliberately broke them to cause the maximum amount of damage to soldiers and civilians alike.
I think that distinction between a personal oath and a national duty is, well, it feels a bit simplistic when you're talking about an imperial occupation. You're basically elevating an oath to an aggressive foreign power over the duty he had to his own people, who were facing cultural extinction. The sources are pretty clear. Varus was imposing taxes and laws that were completely alien and unwanted. Arminius's real loyalty, his fundamental loyalty, was to the Cherusi. His Roman rank, his citizenship, those were just tools. And he used them brilliantly to unite tribes that historically hated each other. The Cherusi, the Chatti, the Marsi against a common enemy. That duty to his kin, in my mind, just completely supersedes any oath he made to Rome. And we have to talk about the necessity of the ambush itself. Varus's whole administrative approach, it just proves he completely underestimated the Germans, treated them as inferiors. That made him sloppy. Legions would have been suicide, absolute suicide. They had to neutralize Rome's biggest advantages, their training, their technology, their discipline.
Okay, but they did it through total deceit, not honorable combat.
Honorable by whose standards? The occupiers? The ambush was the only viable strategy. Using their knowledge of the terrain, the narrow paths, the dense woods, the barricades they built in advance. It was the perfect application of local knowledge against the superior military force.
It was a perfect storm designed for maximum carnage against an enemy who didn't even know they were in a fight. Arminius didn't engage them. He literally vanished, saying he was going to get reinforcements, and left them to march into a pre-prepared kill zone. They were moving into winter quarters, not marching in battle formation. And let's not forget the weather, the rain, the mud. It made the testudo formation, the classic Roman shield wall, impossible to form. The very thing that made the infantry so formidable was neutralized by the ground Arminius chose. Yes, it was a tactical masterpiece, but it was fundamentally dishonorable.
Dishonor can be the price of liberation when you're facing an overwhelming force. The goal wasn't to play by the invaders' rules of war. The goal was to win freedom.
But the consequence of that dishonor was catastrophic, not just for the men, but for the Roman psyche. It led to the capture of the Aquilae, the sacred eagle standards of the three legions. That was the ultimate disgrace. The eagle wasn't just a flag, it was the living soul of the legion. To lose three at once, it was just unthinkable. It shows you the depth of the humiliation, the depth of the betrayal. So let's pivot to what happened after. What was Arminius' true legacy? After this great victory, after saving Germania, his political career was short-lived. He was assassinated in 21 AD, just 12 years later. And who killed him? His own relatives, because of internal power struggles. It suggests that his ability to unite the tribes was temporary, you know? It only lasted as long as the Roman threat was right on their doorstep. Once that faded, his methods, his authority, they were rejected by his own people. He might have created a nation for a moment, but he couldn't actually govern it.
That's an interesting moral take, but I think it misses the sheer historical scale of what he accomplished. We can't let his personal political failures overshadow the victory itself. The impact on Rome was absolute and permanent. The psychological shock was paralyzing. You have Emperor Augustus, who the sources say would just bang his head against a door, shouting, "Quinctilia vere legiones rede." Varus, give me back my legions.
And that cry wasn't just grief, it was the sound of the Roman world suddenly realizing it had a limit. An absolute, unbreachable limit.
Exactly. And that realization became policy. Augustus made the call. The 17th, 18th, and 19th legions were never rebuilt. Their numbers were retired forever. That's an almost unthinkable act, and it just highlights how severe the trauma was.
The psychological scar was immense, I agree. But you have to remember, Germanicus did lead revenge campaigns later and recovered 2 of the lost eagles. So Roman honor was, at least in part, restored.
They recovered symbols, sure, but the reality on the ground didn't change. Rome built the Limes Germanicus and accepted that border. They stopped trying to create Germania Magna. And that decision is what allowed a separate Germanic culture, identity, and language to flourish. That is why centuries and centuries later, Germany built the Hermann Monument in 1875 to celebrate him as a national founder. His short life doesn't matter as much as the 2,000 years of cultural separation he secured. So, to sum up my position, when you weigh the personal betrayal against the existential threat of cultural erasure, I think Arminius' actions are justified. His ambush, as brutal as it was, secured a permanent geopolitical boundary. It guaranteed the survival of his people's culture, creating the Europe we know. He paid a high personal price, but his people endured.
I acknowledge the outcome. The preservation of Germanic culture is, well, it's undeniable. But I can't get past the fundamental violation of trust, both military and personal. He used his Roman citizenship, his rank, his friendship with Varus to lead thousands of people, including families, non-combatants, into a slaughterhouse. His strategy only worked because his betrayal was so complete.
And I think the debate over Arminius really forces us to ask that timeless question. At what point does a necessary act of liberation cross the line into unforgivable treachery? When does your duty to your people completely override any duty to the state that's occupying your land?
It's a foundational event. It shaped Europe, and it forces us to look at the ethics of strategy right alongside the historical results. Even after Germanicus brought back the bones of the dead for a proper burial, Rome never truly tried to reconquer Germania. Teutoburg stands as this permanent monument to the limits of empire.
Indeed. And there's so much more to explore in the material here. Varus's catastrophic judgment, the grief of Augustus, the ongoing conflicts between the tribes.
I couldn't agree more.
Until next time.
Goodbye.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time.